Hi, my students. Welcome to my English class. With me, Mr. Andi Prastio. Today's topic is about expressions of suggesting and offering, Part 1. On the Part 1, we are going to focus only on suggestions. Major English for 11th grade of State Senior High School 1, Bogor City. Before going on our main materials, I'd like to tell you about our learning objectives of the lesson. There are 6 learning objectives. Number 1, the students are expected to show their enthusiasm in the learning process. Number 2, the students are expected to show their good personality and courtesy in the form of interpersonal communication with the teacher and the whole class. Number 3, the students are expected to listen carefully to what the teacher explains about the use and the selected phrases for suggesting and offering. Number 4, the students are able to identify the social function of every modal or phrase used for suggesting and offering. Number 5, the students are able to practice their own expressions of giving suggestions appropriately are related to the recent situations. And the last, the teacher is able to give reflections about the material has been taught to the students. As I've told to you that for this meeting we are going to focus only on suggestions, and for the next meeting we just focus on expressions of offering. Let's start the lesson. Okay, for the first, I'd like to tell you about the difference between suggestions and advice in English. Maybe some of you have known about suggestions and also advice in English, but actually suggestions has the same meaning as advice in English commonly, and it's rather difficult actually to differentiate them, but semantically there is an explicit difference between them. Someone can give advice to others if she or he is in the authority and has a lot of experiences. For example, a parent, mother or father, tells something good to his or her children, how to improve achievements in school. It is called advice. On the other hand, someone can follow or deny people's suggestions she or he has received. Furthermore, advice is more strict but not for suggestions. Well, I'd like to tell you more about the difference between suggestions and advice in English. This is a kind of additional knowledge for you all, that the significant difference between suggestions and advice is in the matter of the context, the use of context, and the relationship among the speakers. Suggestions is usually used without seeing the power relationship or authority, like mother to sons, teacher to students, boss to employees, because it's usually given for giving ideas which are considered interesting to give. Next, these are some common ways to ask for suggestions in English. Number 1, I have a problem. I need your advice. Next, what do you suggest? Number 3, do you have any suggestions? Or do you have any suggestions for me? Next, what should I do? This is the common phrase or the common sentence to ask for suggestions. Next, if you were me, what would you do? Then, what's your suggestions to me? Next, please tell me what to do. Next, the last, what ought I to do? Maybe some of you have been familiar with those common ways to ask for suggestions in English that I've explained to you all. And for the next, the modals and phrases used to give suggestions in English. Number 1 is the modal should. Number 2 is ought to. Number 3, be supposed to. Number 4, have or has to. Number 5, why not and why don't you. Number 6, imaginative conditional or conditional type 2. Number 7, would you like or would. Number 8, I think, I don't think. Number 9, imperative. Number 10, my suggestions. And number 11, it's better for you too. Well, for the next, I'd like to introduce you with the expressions of giving suggestions in English. There are some expressions of giving suggestions in English. Please pay attention. One by one. Number 1 is, I would like to suggest you that. Number 2, it's better for you to. Or you may say, it's best for you to. Next, my suggestions is, and then you are supposed to. Be supposed to is used when you are expected by someone else to do something. And then you should plus a verb 1 or best verb. If I were you, I would. This is a kind of imaginative conditional or conditional type 2. Next, why not plus verb 1. This is in the questions forms with a question mark at the end. And then why don't you plus verb 1. How about plus verb ing or gerund. Okay, next, I think, I don't think you should. You have to, or she has to. Try to. You try to, if you know that try to is a kind of imperative sentence because the initial part of the sentence is a verb. And the last, you ought to plus a verb 1. On the next slide, I'd like to explain you about the use should and ought to. As you know, that the forms of modals consist of 3. The first one is a modal verb, second one is modal phrase, and the last one is modal-like forms. Should is a member of modal verbs, and the other members of modal verbs like will, would, can, and so on. And then ought to is a member of modal phrase like be supposed to and would like to with to at the end. And the modal-like forms is like had better. Had better is usually used to make advice in English. Okay, next. Should and ought to are the members actually of English modals. Okay, in general, they are the same in use, but in meaning there is some slightly differences between them. Look at the examples first. Number 1, you should come to the teacher's office. Number 2, you ought to send this email soon. We can look at the number 1. The sentence use modal verb should, and number 2, the sentence use modal phrase ought to. And I will explain you more about the use of both. That should is kind of polite forms of modal verb to make suggestions or advice in English. And the common form actually. But for ought to is a kind of old-fashioned and then more polite forms of modal than should. And you can use ought to speak or to tell something to older people or to your mother or your fathers, because it is formal, very formal, and more polite than should. Okay. Well, on the next slide, I'd like to explain you about the use of have or has to, be supposed to, and the other functions of ought to. Okay, have or has to or be supposed to and ought to includes on the list of modal phrases. They all can be used to make suggestion sentences with their own different functions. Look at these examples. Number 1, you have to go to the doctor because you have a serious problems with your heart. Number 2, I'm supposed to go to the cinema soon. Anita has been waiting for me for 2 hours. Number 3, my sister ought to clean the house even though it has been cleaned already. Okay, well, next, I will explain you all the difference among three. The first one is have to. Have to is similar to the use of must in English. The first sentence indicates that you like or don't like or must have to go to the doctor or there will be consequences on your health. Jadi penggunaan have to di sini sama dengan penggunaan must. Ketika kalian menolak sesuatu yang disarankan dengan have to or must di sini sama is the same. Akan ada konsekuensi di akhir itu. Jadi harus suka tidak suka kalian harus melakukan hal tersebut. And next, on the second sentence, be supposed to is used when there is someone else expect us to do something. It means Anita very expect me to go to the cinema. Ya, jadi di kalimat kedua penggunaan be supposed to, kalau kita menggunakan be supposed to berarti ada orang lain yang mengharapkan kita melakukan sesuatu. Seperti di kalimat kedua, I'm supposed to go to the cinema soon. Anita has been waiting for me for 2 hours. Nah, saya seharusnya pergi ke bioskop sekarang. Saya sudah seharusnya pergi ke bioskop sekarang. Yang mengharapkan saya untuk pergi ke bioskop adalah Anita. Ada seseorang yang mengharapkan kedatangan saya ke bioskop. Itu menggunakan be supposed to. Terus, the last is ought to. You can follow or deny the suggestions with ought to. The house has been cleaned already. It's up to you to re-clean the house or don't do that. Nah, ini the other functions. Fungsi lain dari ought to yang sebelumnya saya jelaskan. Kalau ought to yang sebelumnya saya jelaskan dibandingkan dengan should, very formal. Tapi kalau ought to di sini artinya sesuatu yang kita lakukan baik dan tidak dilakukan pun masih baik. Jadi my sister ought to clean the house. Saudara saya harus membersihkan rumah. Sebenarnya rumah itu sudah bersih. Kalau dibersihkan semakin bersih, tidak dibersihkan pun sudah bersih. Itu pakai ought to, boleh dilakukan atau tidak. Well, on the next slide, I'd like to explain you about the use of questions in giving suggestions. Actually, there are 4 phrases we can use to express suggestions. They are why don't you, how about, what about, and why not. Okay, the use of those 4 question forms is to make advice or make suggestions less direct actually, and we can use a question to make the person we are advising or suggesting consider about the suggestions or advice we are giving them. Okay, so the 4 expressions or the 4 questions, these formal questions, can be used both in suggestions and advice. Okay, look at the examples. Number 1, why don't you do this exercise? Number 2, how about running around Kebun Raya? Number 3, what about participating on this online seminar? Number 4, why not spend your days off to do fun? Okay, the verb placed after why don't you is the best verb or verb 1, like do this exercise, do. And the verbs placed after both how about and what about are in the forms of gerund or verb ing. And why not? Why not is one kind of questions in suggestions and advice that mostly used by advertiser to promote their stuff or goods that you can find on newspapers, magazine, or on the road. Why not spend your days off to do fun? It means that the marketing office of Dufan tries to persuade people to spend their holiday over there. Jadi why not itu lebih sering digunakan oleh mereka perusahaan untuk mempromosikan ungkapan why not dalam pertanyaan ini. Beda dengan pertanyaan yang lain, why don't you, how about, and what about. Ya. Okay, once more I explain to you all that the use of why not. Jadi penggunaan why not di sini fungsinya kebanyakan adalah untuk mempromosikan sesuatu yang mana penggunanya adalah advertiser, pengiklan, seperti contoh tadi Dufan. Jadi why not? Kenapa tidak menghabiskan liburanmu di Dufan? Berarti the meaning of the sentence is marketing office dari Dufan itu ingin persuade, membujuk para warga untuk menghabiskan masa liburannya di Dufan, seperti itu. And next, the use of imaginative conditional or conditional type 2. Okay, conditional type 2 is the other names of imaginative conditional. Sometimes it can be something complicated for those who haven't learned about conditional. Jadi bagi mereka yang tidak tahu istilah imaginative conditional, saya beritahu bahwa itu adalah nama lain dari conditional type 2 dan tipe ketiga sebenarnya. Dan ini banyak digunakan untuk membuat kalimat advice atau suggestions in English. But for this part, we just focus on suggestions. If someone is asking for your suggestions, it is useful to imagine yourself being in person positions, and such a good way to explain your suggestions. For examples, if I were you, I would beg pardon to your mother. From this sentence, you have to imagine, or you have to put yourself in the other person positions. Jadi kamu dari kalimat ini, if I were you, kamu harus membayangkan bahwa diri kamu itu ada di posisi orang lain jika saya adalah kamu. Fungsinya seperti itu, the purpose. Jika saya adalah kamu, saya akan meminta maaf kepada ibumu. I would beg pardon to your mother. This is a kind of suggestions, termasuk ke dalam konteks yang polite. Well, on the next slide, I'd like to tell you about the use of would like and would. Would like to is in the class of modal phrase because there is to at the end of the phrase, and whereas would is a modal verb, but both have the same use to make suggestions more polite. People can use the verb suggest and recommend after would like or would. Like in the examples, number 1, I would like to suggest you that wearing face mask is better. Number 2, I would recommend taking this opportunity. Both of them are formal and polite to make suggestions. Oke, berikutnya saya akan menjelaskan ke kalian tentang penggunaan modal could. Could is not as strong as should and is normally used to give mild or more polite suggestions or advice. Jadi di sini could ini dikatakan lebih polite or mild, ya, dalam expressing suggestions or advice dibandingkan dengan should. Should sudah polite, but this one is more polite. But very polite is masih ought to. Ya, it is also used to suggest a solution to some problem. The examples: I hate my old jeans. Saya benci, saya tidak suka lagi dengan jeans saya. Well, you could buy a new pair. The problem is I hate my old jeans. Okay, and the solution is you could buy a new pair. Next, if they need more space, they could look for a bigger house. Okay, jika kamu butuh ruangan yang lebih besar, belilah rumah yang besar, lebih besar. Ya, so the problems, I need more space, and the solution, I could look for a bigger house. And then Jack moved to Canada next month. He could learn to play hockey there. Well, understood. Okay, for the next is the suggestion phrases. You can read by yourself. They are 4 phrases you can learn at home. Okay, please look at the expressions of accepting suggestions. There are 6 expressions. You can learn by yourself, yeah. Next is the expressions of declining suggestions. You can look at the examples. Yeah, there are some examples of declining suggestions. Any questions so far? Kalau ada pertanyaan, silahkan tuliskan di kolom komentar ya. Berikutnya adalah latihan untuk kalian. There are 2 dialogue. Fill the blanks on the dialogue below with should, would, or could. Nah, ini ada 10 fill the blanks. Jadi nanti kalian kerjakan, kemudian dikumpulkan di Google Classroom yang telah saya buat ya. Within 2 days. Jadi dalam jangka waktu 2 hari sampai dengan hari Minggu ya. Thank you for listening to my explanations. I'm waiting for your questions ya. Bye bye. Thank you.